At Thanksgiving dinner, my daughter-in-law left a card on the table. Family trip. Clean the house before we're back. Even the nanny went along. I simply smiled. When they returned and their keys didn't work in the door, my daughter-in-law fainted. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My story begins with a betrayal that will shake you to your core. Like and share if you're ready to hear what happened, and let me know where you're listening from. The scent of freshly brewed coffee, usually a comforting aroma that signaled the gentle start to my day, hung heavy and alien in the air. I'd walked into my kitchen, a space that had been the heart of our home for 3 decades, only to find Serena, my daughter-in-law, perched casually on my antique pine stool. She was wearing my favorite silk robe, the one Marcus had given me for our 20th anniversary, a vibrant sapphire blue that contrasted sharply with her blonde hair. In her hand, she held my grandmother's delicate bone china cup, its rim stained with lipstick, sipping from it as if she owned the place. And I suppose in that moment, she believed she did. "Good morning, Eleanor," she chirped, her tone dripping with a saccharine sweetness that made my teeth ache. She didn't bother to move, didn't offer to make me a cup. It was a clear, unambiguous statement of ownership. My gaze flickered to the cup. It was a family heirloom, reserved for special occasions, never for casual morning use. My grandmother, God rest her soul, would have had a fit. "Serena," I managed, my voice a mere whisper. The shock was a cold hand gripping my throat. "What are you doing here?" She smiled, a predatory curve of her lips. "Marcus is waiting for you in his study. He wants to talk." She paused, took another slow sip from my cup, and then added, her eyes glinting with malicious triumph, "We both have some things to discuss." We both have. The implication hung in the air, thick and nauseating. It wasn't just Serena in my kitchen, in my robe with my china. It was the we. A cold dread began to seep into my bones, chilling me from the inside out. My head started to spin, but I forced myself to remain outwardly composed. Years of keeping up appearances, of being the perfect wife, had taught me how to mask internal turmoil. I walked away from the kitchen, the scent of her perfume cloying in my nostrils, and moved down the familiar hallway towards Marcus's study. Every step was heavy, each footfall echoing the weight of 30 years of marriage. Memories flashed before my eyes. Our wedding day, the birth of our children, the countless holidays, the quiet evenings spent by the fire. This house, our sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum. A sense of impending doom pressed down on me, suffocating and relentless. This wasn't just a casual conversation. This was an ending. I could feel it in the air, taste it on my tongue. The study door was ajar. Marcus sat behind his father's grand mahogany desk, a formidable piece of furniture that had witnessed generations of family decisions. His posture was rigid, his face impassive, almost alien. There was a stack of papers meticulously arranged on the polished wood before him. He didn't look up immediately, instead focusing on an imaginary speck on the desk, his silence more damning than any accusation. Finally, his eyes met mine. They were devoid of warmth, of any recognition of the woman he had shared his life with. "Eleanor," he began, his voice flat, emotionless. "The marriage is over." My breath hitched. The words were a physical blow, yet they landed with an almost expected thud. "What?" I whispered, my voice cracking. He pushed the stack of papers across the desk. "These are the divorce papers. My attorney has drawn them up. I'm offering a reasonable settlement, $50,000. $50,000, 30 years, a lifetime of partnership, of shared dreams, of building an empire from the ground up, reduced to a paltry sum." The hurt was a raw, gaping wound in my chest. 3 decades of unwavering support, of managing the household, raising our children, hosting his business partners, nurturing his ambitions. I was the silent engine that kept our lives running smoothly, the steadfast partner who believed in him when no one else did. I was the foundation upon which he built his success. 50,000? I echoed, the incredulity battling with the pain. "Marcus, everything we have, everything you have built, I was a part of it." He leaned back, a cold, calculated look in his eyes. Legally, Eleanor, you never contributed financially. All assets are in my name, as you know. The house, the businesses, the investments, they're all mine. You have no legal claim to anything beyond what I'm offering out of goodwill. The audacity, the cruel distortion of our reality was breathtaking. He had told me countless times that I didn't need to work, that my role was at home, supporting him, creating a loving environment, and I had believed him. I had dedicated myself wholeheartedly to that role, pouring my heart and soul into making our home a haven, raising our son, standing by him through thick and thin. Just then, Serena glided into the study, now dressed in one of my favorite emerald green silk dresses, a garment I had bought for a gala only last year. It fit her perfectly, almost mockingly. She wrapped her arm around Marcus's shoulder, her fingers stroking his hair possessively. Marcus is being incredibly generous, Eleanor, she purred, her eyes glinting with a smug satisfaction. Most women who don't work don't get anything. She emphasized work with a sneer, as if my years of managing a household, nurturing a family, and supporting a husband's career were akin to a permanent vacation. For a moment, the world tilted on its axis. The betrayal, the insolence, the sheer audacity of it all was overwhelming. I felt a surge of rage, hot and fierce, rise within me. But then, an odd calm settled over me, a surprising clarity. I looked at Marcus, then at Serena, draped in my life, enjoying the spoils they believed they had won. A quiet, unsettling realization dawned on me. They had no idea, absolutely no idea who they were truly dealing with. Their smugness, their confidence in their calculated cruelty was built on a foundation of ignorance. I took a deep breath, smoothing down my dress, a simple cotton day dress that now felt completely out of place. Very well, I said, my voice steady, surprising even myself. I'll leave tomorrow morning. Marcus and Serena exchanged a quick glance, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief. They had expected tears. They had expected hysterics. They had expected a fight. My calm acceptance clearly threw them off balance. You won't fight this? Marcus asked, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I smiled then, a genuine smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. It was a smile of understanding, of dawning power. No, Marcus, I won't fight you on this. I paused, letting the implication hang. I just need to make a few phone calls tonight. Their eyes widened. Serena's grip on Marcus's arm tightened. I turned and walked out of the study, leaving them whispering furiously behind me, their confusion and unease palpable. They had won this battle, they thought, but they were utterly unaware that the real game had just begun. The true beginning of my story wasn't in that study, nor in the kitchen where Serena sipped from my grandmother's cup. It began 6 months earlier on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. I was in the library tidying the overflowing bookshelves, a task I enjoyed when I heard Serena's voice from the patio, high-pitched and conspiratorial. She must have thought I was out, or perhaps simply dismissed my presence as irrelevant. The French doors were slightly ajar, letting in the gentle breeze and, unfortunately for her conversation. Honestly, Marcus is so easy, she giggled into the phone, her words carrying clearly across the quiet garden. He truly thinks he's pulling all the strings. The old bat won't even see it coming. My hands, poised to place a first edition of Jane Austen back on its shelf, froze. Old bat! It was undeniably me she was referring to. A slow, cold dread began to seep into my veins. I pressed myself against the wall, listening, my heart beginning to thump an erratic rhythm against my ribs. Serena continued, her voice filled with a sickening glee. We'll have everything within a few months. He's completely under my thumb. Honestly, Eleanor is so clueless. An idle housewife, never worked a day in her life, never managed a single cent of their money. She won't know what hit her. The words sliced through me, each one a sharp, deliberate cut. Clueless. Idle housewife. Never worked. Oh, the irony was almost unbearable. My heart was now hammering, a drumbeat of fury and dawning realization. It wasn't just a casual affair. This was premeditated. This was a hostile takeover of my life. Then came the confirmation of Marcus's complicity. He's already talking to his lawyer about the divorce, Serena bragged, her voice dropping to a low, triumphant whisper. Said the prenup is ironclad. She'll be left with absolutely nothing. Just like we planned. Nothing. The word echoed in the sudden silence of the library as Serena presumably hung up. I stood there, rooted to the spot, the betrayal washing over me in waves. My own husband planning to strip me bare to leave me destitute with the help of his mistress, my son's wife. It was monstrous. But beneath the initial shock, a different emotion began to simmer. A quiet, steely resolve. They thought I was clueless. They were in for the surprise of their lives. That night, I lay awake long after Marcus's heavy, oblivious snores filled the room. The darkness was a comforting cloak, allowing my mind to race, to process, to plan. There were no tears, no self-pity, only a cold, analytical determination. I went over Serena's words again and again, piecing together the fragments of their plan. Divorce, leaving me with nothing, within months. It meant they were already moving quickly. The next morning, I waited until Marcus had left for his office, his usual hurried departure, a blessing in disguise. With a focused precision that surprised even myself, I went into his study, the very room where he would later deliver his cruel pronouncement. I knew his habits, his hiding places. The key to his locked desk drawer was always beneath the antique paperweight shaped like a ship. My hands moved surely, confidently. Inside, I found a trove of documents, bank statements, investment portfolios with detailed breakdowns, property deeds for the house, the vacation cottage, the business park. Methodically, silently, I used my phone to photograph every single page, every number, every signature. The quiet clicks of the camera were the only sounds in the room, each one sealing their fate, and mine. My suspicions were chillingly confirmed. The documents showed a rapid acceleration of asset liquidation. Several large sums had already been transferred to various shell corporations, and there were notes about offshore accounts and restructuring for minimal tax liability. It wasn't just about divorcing me, it was about draining everything, leaving no trace and disappearing with every penny. They weren't just ending our marriage, they were planning to erase me from our shared financial history entirely. That very afternoon, I found myself walking through the discreet, polished doors of Sterling Financial Consultants. The building was understated, elegant, nestled in a quiet, upscale part of the city. As I stepped inside, the receptionist, a sharp, impeccably dressed young woman, greeted me with a respectful nod. "Good afternoon, Ms. Sterling. Mr. Davies is expecting you." Ms. Sterling. That was the other me, the one Marcus, Serena, and indeed most of the world knew nothing about. I had inherited a substantial trust fund at 21, a legacy from my paternal grandmother who, like me, understood the importance of quiet strength and independence. While Marcus pursued his ambitions, believing he was building our fortune, I had quietly used my business degree to build my own. Sterling Financial Consultants was more than just a company. It was my secret legacy, specializing in helping women protect and grow their wealth, often from husbands who underestimated them, or worse, sought to exploit them. It was born from a foresight I hadn't even fully understood until that morning. In his spacious office, David Davies, my most trusted advisor and the managing director of Sterling, rose to greet me. His expression was serious, reflecting the urgency of my unscheduled visit. "Eleanor," he began, dropping the formal Ms. Sterling for the privacy of the moment. "You look concerned. Has something happened?" "It has, David," I replied, sitting opposite him. "The Morrison portfolio transfers. I need them accelerated, immediately, every single one." David's eyebrows rose slightly. He knew the code name. He knew its implications. He knew the intricate web of loans and investments I had discreetly made over 3 decades. Channels that had funneled capital into Marcus's burgeoning businesses, making them appear entirely self-made. The house we lived in, the luxury cars in the garage, the very business Marcus prided himself on owning, all of it had been carefully, subtly funded through my carefully structured loans and strategic investments. Marcus had always believed he was a self-made man, a financial genius. He was, in fact, a carefully cultivated project, financed by his clueless wife. "Are we talking about pulling the plug, Eleanor?" David asked. his voice low and grave. I met his gaze, my own eyes filled with a new, unwavering resolve. Yes, David, it's time to pull the plug. Completely. I want to liquidate every single investment, recall every loan, every asset associated with Marcus Morrison, directly or indirectly, needs to be untangled and brought back under my direct control. I want it done by tomorrow morning. David nodded slowly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. Understood, Miss Sterling. Consider it done. The months that followed my discovery were a strange, unsettling period. I became an observer in my own life, watching Marcus and Serena's clumsy dance of deception with a mixture of disgust and a morbid fascination. They were so transparent, so confident in their perceived cleverness, it was almost comical. Their attempts at discretion were laughably poor. Marcus's urgent business trips suddenly began to coincide with Serena's much-needed spa weekends. Their stolen glances across the dinner table, the way Serena's hand would linger on Marcus's arm a second too long, the hushed conversations that abruptly ceased when I entered a room. It was all so cliché, so predictable. Any fool could have seen it, and perhaps that was part of their insult, the assumption that I was indeed such a fool. Then, Serena began to wear my jewelry. Not subtly, not pieces she might have found and mistakenly borrowed, but significant, sentimental items. My pearl necklace, a gift from my mother on my wedding day, would appear around her neck at a family dinner. My diamond earrings, a milestone anniversary present from Marcus, would sparkle at her ears. When I once asked her about the necklace, she simply shrugged, batting her eyelashes at Marcus. "Oh, Marcus said it would look lovely on me, didn't you, darling?" Marcus, ever the coward, would just grunt in agreement, avoiding my gaze. The audacity was astounding, but I bit my tongue, maintaining the facade. Every piece of jewelry she wore was a fresh wound, but I collected them all, silently, in my mind. What was more painful than the affair itself, more cutting than the physical betrayal, was watching Marcus transform. The man I had loved, the man I had built a life with, slowly morphed into a cruel, dismissive stranger. His patience with me evaporated, replaced by sharp words and an icy indifference. He would barely acknowledge my presence, and when he did, it was usually to criticize or belittle. I realized then that Serena hadn't corrupted him. She had merely revealed who he truly was, stripping away the charming facade he had worn for 30 years. The man beneath was petty, selfish, and utterly without remorse. This revelation, though devastating, also served to steel my resolve. My affection for him withered, replaced by a cold certainty that he deserved every consequence heading his way. 2 weeks before the kitchen confrontation, their planning escalated. I was in the garden pruning roses when I heard their voices again, emanating from the open windows of Marcus's study. They were discussing their future, their new life, with the casual confidence of architects designing a dream home. "A house in California, definitely, darling," Serena chirped, her voice light with excitement. "Something with an ocean view, and a European honeymoon, of course. Venice, Paris, maybe a little villa in Tuscany." "Sounds perfect, my love," Marcus responded, his voice uncharacteristically soft, tender. "And children. You mentioned wanting children, didn't you?" A knot tightened in my stomach. Children. They were planning a whole new life, a family, built on the ashes of mine. They spoke of liquidating everything, as if our shared life was nothing more than a bank account to be emptied. "We'll live comfortably for years, darling," Serena said, "even without working. All those investments, the businesses, it's more than enough." Then Marcus delivered the final blow, a casual assumption that spoke volumes about his contempt. "Eleanor will probably just move in with her sister in Ohio. Poor thing, nowhere else to go, really." Serena laughed, a sound like glass shattering. 30 years of marriage and nothing to show for it. Pathetic, really. I stood there, the pruning shears still in my hand, a faint smile playing on my lips. "Nothing to show for it," she said. Oh, how wrong they were. They were so blissfully unaware, so consumed by their greedy vision, that they couldn't see the ground crumbling beneath their feet. They were gleefully discussing their grand theft, completely oblivious to the fact that I was, at that very moment, systematically dismantling their financial foundation, brick by painstaking brick. Every penny they thought they were taking was in reality being carefully, legally rerouted. After Marcus and Serena had retreated for the night, filled with their triumphant whispers and plans, I began making my calls. These weren't casual conversations. They were the final activation of a meticulously crafted strategy. First, I called my attorney, the sharpest legal mind in the city, a woman who specialized in complex financial matters and had been briefed on Operation Morrison for months. "It's time, Martha," I stated, my voice low and firm. "Execute the divorce filings first thing tomorrow morning and activate the emergency injunction on all of Marcus's personal and business accounts. No withdrawals, no transfers, effective immediately." Next, I called my accountant. "John, I need an immediate audit and valuation of all the Morrison Group holdings, every business, every property, every brain asset, and prepare a full report detailing my financial contributions, both direct and indirect, over the past 30 years. I want it ready by noon tomorrow." Finally, I called the real estate management company that oversaw not just our family home, but several of the commercial properties Marcus owned, properties that were in truth secretly controlled by Sterling Financial. "Yes, I need to schedule an immediate inspection for the property at 23 Maple Drive and for the commercial complex on Grand Avenue. And please ensure all necessary documents for the recall of the underlying leases are prepared and ready for my signature tomorrow morning." By the time I hung up the phone for the last time, the house was silent once more, save for the rhythmic snores from Marcus's bedroom. But the quiet was no longer oppressive. It was pregnant with anticipation. Every detail was in motion. Every piece on the board moved into place. Tomorrow their grand illusion would shatter, and a life-altering revelation would begin. They had no idea the chess game I had been playing while they thought they were playing checkers. The morning after my crucial phone calls broke with a symphony of chaos. I woke to Marcus's voice, raw with panic, echoing from his study. "What do you mean, frozen? Our accounts? All of them?" His shouts grew louder, more frantic, as he paced, his words punctuated by frantic calls to his bank and his bewildered assistant. The sound was not jarring, it was a sweet melody, the first notes of the retribution I had so carefully orchestrated. I calmly made my coffee, savoring the rich aroma, watching the steam curl from the mug, knowing my attorneys had filed the paperwork precisely at opening time. All joint accounts, all business accounts in Marcus's name were now inaccessible. He burst into the kitchen, disheveled, hair awry, still clutching his phone. His eyes, usually so composed, were wild with agitation. "Eleanor, what the hell is going on? My bank accounts are frozen. They said there's an injunction. What mistake have you made?" He looked at me as if I, the clueless wife, could somehow be responsible for such a monumental error. I set down my cup, the delicate china clinking softly against the saucer, and met his gaze, my own eyes calm and unwavering. "There's no mistake, Marcus," I stated, my voice even, devoid of the emotion he probably expected. He stared, confused, his brow furrowing. "No mistake? What did you do?" "I protected my assets," I replied simply, the words hanging in the air like a pronouncement. His face, already pale, drained of all color. The realization, slow and painful, began to dawn on him. Just then, Serena appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, wrapped in one of her flimsy silk robes. Her sleepy confusion quickly shifted to a sharp, predatory alertness as she registered the tension in the room. "What assets?" she interjected, her voice laced with incredulity, almost a laugh. "What assets could you possibly have, Eleanor?" I almost laughed myself. Her certainty, her contempt, was so absolute. She truly believed I had nothing. She truly believed her narrative of the idle housewife, the dependent woman with no financial acumen. The bitter truth awaiting her was going to be a masterpiece of irony. I walked to the kitchen window, gazing out at the meticulously manicured garden, a space I had personally designed and nurtured over the years. "Do you remember when we bought this house, Marcus?" I asked, my voice soft, almost nostalgic. "How excited you were. How you said you'd work so much overtime to save up for the down payment." He followed my gaze, a flicker of pride momentarily overriding his panic. "Of course I remember, the very first real home we owned. I busted my ass for that down payment. I turned, a gentle smile on my face. You did work incredibly hard, Marcus, but the down payment, and indeed all the subsequent mortgage payments, were actually facilitated by a loan. His brows furrowed in confusion. A loan from where? We never took out a bank loan for the down payment. No, not a bank, I corrected gently. A loan from Sterling Financial Group. The name hung in the air. His eyes narrowed, searching my face, a flicker of uncertainty beginning to replace his earlier bewilderment. He knew the name, of course. Sterling Financial was a well-respected, though relatively discreet investment firm. He had probably even tried to do business with them at some point, unknowingly seeking funds from his own wife. I turned fully to face them, letting the impact of my next words sink in. Sterling Financial isn't just a group, Marcus. It isn't just a bank. It's my company. It has been for 30 years. A profound silence descended upon the kitchen, thick and suffocating. Marcus's face was a canvas of rapidly shifting emotions, confusion, disbelief, and finally a dawning, terrifying fear. He stumbled back, bumping into a chair, his mouth agape. Serena, however, was quicker to recover, her denial manifesting as a sneer. That's impossible, she scoffed, crossing her arms. You? Just a housewife? You know nothing about business. You're delusional. I met her gaze, my smile unwavering. Oh, really, Serena? Because I seem to recall earning a master's degree in business administration from Northwestern University. Graduated summa cum laude, in fact. All before I married Marcus. You never asked about my past, did you? Neither did Marcus, for that matter. Marcus sank into the nearest kitchen chair, the sound of wood scraping against the tile floor echoing in the stunned silence. He looked utterly broken, defeated. His eyes were wide with a horrifying realization of the depth of my hidden life, the carefully constructed facade he had never once questioned. He looked at me, his voice barely a whisper, a lament. You never told me that. You never asked, I replied. The truth is cold and hard as stone. If you're still with me, you're about to hear the real truth come out. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you don't miss a single part of my story. The silence in the kitchen was thick, punctuated only by Marcus's shallow breathing. His face, still pale, was a portrait of disbelief. Serena stood frozen, her sneers slowly fading into open-mouthed shock. I walked calmly to my briefcase, which I had placed discreetly by the door, and retrieved a stack of impeccably organized documents. I laid the first one on the kitchen island, smoothing it out with a deliberate hand. This, I began, my voice clear and steady, is the deed to this house. As you can see, it's not in your name, Marcus. It's owned by Sterling Holdings, LLC. I paused, allowing the words to sink in. A subsidiary of my company. Marcus's eyes darted to the paper, then back to me, his confusion deepening into outright bewilderment. He picked up the deed, his hands trembling slightly, scanning the fine print he had never bothered to read when he signed the initial mortgage agreement. What are you talking about? He stammered. For the past 28 years, Marcus, I continued, you've been paying rent to my company. Every single mortgage payment you thought you were making to a bank, every property tax, every insurance premium, it all flowed through Sterling. You were essentially leasing your own home from me. He dropped the paper, a sickening thud echoing through the quiet kitchen. His mouth opened and closed, no words coming out. I didn't stop there. I presented another document, the lease agreement for the luxury sedan he drove, the one he proudly showcased to his colleagues. Then another, for the sleek yacht he kept at the marina, a status symbol he adored. Even his coveted country club membership, his exclusive golf clubs, each item, each luxury he believed was his, was meticulously detailed as a leased asset from one of my various entities. Each document I placed on the counter was a nail in the coffin of his manufactured reality. Serena, her composure finally shattering, snatched one of the papers, her perfectly manicured nails crumpling the crisp edges. Where did you get all this money? She demanded, her voice shrill, a desperate edge of panic creeping in. You're just a housewife. You have no job. I looked at her, a faint, almost pitying smile touching my lips. My family has a legacy in finance, Serena. 4 generations of it. My grandmother, the one whose china cup you so casually used this morning, ensured I inherited a substantial trust fund when I turned 21. $8 million to be exact. I watched her eyes widen. I didn't spend it. I invested it. Wisely. I picked up another document, a concise financial statement. Today, Sterling Financial Group manages assets worth over $200 million. The number hung in the air, a colossal, undeniable truth. Marcus's face, already ashen, turned a ghastly white. He whispered the number, 200 million, as if trying to grasp its enormity, his mind struggling to reconcile this image with the clueless wife he thought he knew. I shrugged, a casual gesture that belied the monumental revelation. Give or take a few million, of course. The market fluctuates, you understand. Serena stared at me, her jaw slack. The realization was palpable. She had tried to steal from someone who could buy and sell her entire family, a woman whose wealth dwarfed anything she could have ever dreamed of. The greedy gleam in her eyes had been replaced by a chilling fear. Marcus, his voice hoarse and broken, finally found his words. Why? Why did you hide all of this from me? Why did you let me think I was the provider, the successful one? The question was tinged with a genuine pain, a raw sense of betrayal that almost made me waver. I felt a faint pang of sadness, a brief echo of the love I once held for him. Because I loved you, Marcus, I admitted, my voice softer now. I wanted you to feel important, to feel successful. I genuinely believed in you, in us. I wanted to be your partner, to support your dreams, even if it meant being in the shadows. I wanted you to build your own empire, not just step into mine. I met his gaze, then shifted my eyes to Serena, my voice hardening. But I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not. I'm done being the clueless wife. I pushed the divorce papers he had drawn up back across the counter towards him. These are worthless, Marcus. You can't claim assets that were never truly yours to begin with. And as for that ironclad prenup you were so proud of, the one you insisted on, it was ironically the smartest thing you ever did. It protected my family's wealth, ensuring that everything I brought into the marriage and everything I built with it remained unequivocally mine. You have no legal claim to any of it. His eyes, filled with a mixture of awe and dawning terror, slowly lifted to meet mine. What happens now? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. I smiled. The same calm, unsettling smile from yesterday, the one that had unnerved them both. Now, Marcus, I replied, my voice clear and firm, you learn what it feels like to have nothing. The hours that followed were a chaotic blur. Marcus, still reeling from the revelation of my hidden empire, launched into a desperate flurry of activity. He made frantic phone calls to his lawyer, his banker, his business partners, his voice growing increasingly desperate with each failed attempt to understand or reverse the situation. I watched him, impassive, as he discovered the harsh truth. His business accounts were bone dry. No liquid assets. His frantic calls quickly confirmed that his company, the one he had so proudly claimed as his own, had been operating at a catastrophic loss for the past 8 years. What do you mean, no liquid assets? He roared into the phone, his face contorted in disbelief. We just had a major injection of capital last quarter, I interjected calmly, setting another document on the counter. That major injection of capital, Marcus, came from Sterling Capital Partners, my flagship investment firm. We've been keeping your struggling business afloat for nearly a decade. You haven't made a profit in 8 years. Serena, her face pale and drawn, finally found her voice, shaky and accusatory. This is fraud. You can't just steal his company. I turned to her, my gaze unwavering. Fraud? You, Serena, have been actively participating in a scheme to defraud a 30-year marriage partner of her assets and leave her destitute. You've been planning to steal my life. My actions are merely a comprehensive defense against your calculated cruelty. You call that fraud? No, darling. That's called self-preservation. Then I reached into the old junk drawer beside the kitchen phone, a drawer full of forgotten pens and expired coupons, and pulled out a nondescript manila folder. I opened it and began to lay its contents neatly on the counter. a meticulously documented timeline of their affair. There were printouts of their illicit text messages, hotel receipts from business trips and spa weekends that coincidentally overlapped, credit card statements detailing lavish dinners and gifts, all charged to accounts Marcus believed were secret. And then, the final most damning pieces, blurry photos from discreetly placed cameras, capturing stolen kisses in dimly lit restaurants, and even love notes scrawled in Marcus's distinctive handwriting. Marcus's face turned ashen as he recognized his own script, his own words of endearment to Serena. He saw the dates, the locations, the undeniable evidence of their deceit. Serena gasped, clutching her throat, staring at the photos in horror. "This is an invasion of privacy," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "An invasion of privacy?" I repeated, a dry amusement in my tone. "Perhaps, but I don't need to prove adultery in a court of law, Serena, to protect what is rightfully mine. I simply needed to revoke access." I pulled out my phone. "Margaret," I said into the receiver, my voice clear and precise. "Execute the Morrison termination protocols immediately. All accounts with the properties, all business relationships. Let nothing remain." Marcus lunged, grabbing my arm, his grip surprisingly strong, desperation etched on his face. "What did you do? What did you just do?" I met his gaze, my eyes cold and unyielding, and something in my stare made him release me, his hand falling limply to his side. "I severed every single financial connection, Marcus," I explained, each word a hammer blow. "Those business loans you just discovered? Called in full, due immediately. Your lines of credit? Frozen. All lease agreements for the house, the cars, the boat, the club membership? Terminated, effective immediately. You'll be receiving notices from my property management firm within the hour." As if on cue, the old house phone, which rarely rang anymore, let out a cheerful trill. I picked it up, a pleasant smile on my face. "Eleanor Morrison speaking," I said, a slight emphasis on Morrison. My smile widened. "Daniel Chen, how lovely to hear from you." I listened for a moment, then looked at Marcus, whose eyes were wide with dread. "Yes, Daniel, I understand. Sterling Capital Partners has indeed withdrawn all funding, so your partnership with Marcus is dissolved, effective immediately, and the Morrison Group is officially bankrupt. Thank you for confirming." I hung up, placing the receiver gently back in its cradle. Marcus sank back into his chair, looking utterly defeated, his dreams crumbling around him. 30 years, he muttered, his voice choked with despair. "I thought I was building something." "You were," I acknowledged, "but it was on borrowed time and borrowed money. All of it mine." I looked at them both, then continued. "I knew about your affair 6 months ago, Marcus. I knew about your divorce plans 3 months ago, and Serena's little escape plan to California." I pulled out my tablet, swiping to display an open Instagram profile. "Serena Morrison to be," I read aloud, her private account clearly visible, filled with curated images. A Malibu dream house, a European honeymoon, designer baby clothes, all meticulously detailed, down to the last filtered sunset. You two were rather thorough, weren't you? So you see, I've had ample time to prepare." Marcus looked utterly broken, his eyes red-rimmed and bloodshot. The fight had drained from him, leaving behind a hollow shell. He looked up at me, a glimmer of desperate hope in his gaze. "Eleanor," he croaked, his voice thick with unspent tears. "What do you want? What do you want from us? I'll beg if I have to." A strange mix of emotions swirled within me. Satisfaction? Yes, but also a profound pity. The man before me bore little resemblance to the ambitious, charming man I had married. "What do I want?" I repeated softly. "Marcus, I gave you everything for 30 years. My youth, my devotion, my unwavering financial support, and my complete trust. I wanted a partner, someone to build a life with, to share dreams, but I realize now you didn't want a partner. You wanted an audience for your success. You wanted to be seen as the grand provider." I paused, letting my words sink in. "And now you know the true source of that wealth you paraded. It was never truly yours." Just then, the sound of heavy car doors slamming outside, followed by the rumbling of a large truck, filled the sudden silence. Movers, punctual as always. I walked to the window, watching as two burly men began to unload equipment. "They're here," I announced, turning back to Marcus and Serena. "You have exactly 2 hours to pack only what actually belongs to you. And that, Marcus, is very little." Marcus stumbled to his feet. 2 hours? Eleanor, please. We need more time. "You had months, Marcus," I reminded him, my voice devoid of sympathy. "You had months to plan your new life, your escape, your grand theft. 2 hours is ample time to gather the few personal effects that legally remain yours." I watched them, a surreal detachment settling over me, as they began to navigate the house, touching objects with trembling hands, a dawning comprehension of their dispossession painting their faces. Marcus ran his hand over the polished surface of his father's mahogany desk, the one in his study that had witnessed so much of our marital unraveling. "My father's desk," he murmured, his voice heavy with grief. "It stays," I stated, my voice firm. "It's part of the house, which belongs to Sterling Holdings. And you, Marcus, abandoned your family home, and with it, your legacy." He slumped against the desk, defeated. "The affair, it just happened, Eleanor, I swear." I scoffed. "Nothing just happens, Marcus. An affair is a series of choices. Choices to lie, choices to betray, choices to disrespect your wife and your marriage. Every stolen moment, every whispered lie, every secret meeting, those were all choices." Serena made me feel young again. "Important," he pleaded, looking at her, who was now tearfully attempting to gather some belongings. "Your success was real, Marcus," I countered gently, though the gentleness was laced with steel. "Your ambition was real. Your ability to build connections was real. It was just your money that wasn't. And I hid my wealth not to diminish you, but because I loved you, and I wanted you to be the man you needed to be, the man you thought you were." Serena reappeared, her face blotchy, makeup streaked down her cheeks, clutching a small, half-packed suitcase. She was distraught. "They won't let me take anything," she wailed, pointing a trembling finger at the movers. "Not even my clothes, my designer dresses, my shoes." "The clothes you're referring to, Serena, were purchased with credit cards linked to Marcus's accounts," I explained, my voice calm. "Accounts that were, in turn, funded by my company. Therefore, they legally belong to me. Consider them reclaimed." She dropped to her knees, the small suitcase tumbling from her grasp, spilling a few personal items across the tile floor. "Please, Eleanor, I made a mistake. I thought I loved him." I leaned down slightly, meeting her tear-filled eyes. "You thought you loved his money, Serena. Money that, as you now clearly understand, was never truly his to begin with." Just then, my phone vibrated with an incoming text message. I glanced at it, a faint smile touching my lips. "Oh, and Serena," I added, looking at her as she sobbed on the floor. "It seems your apartment lease, which was conveniently tied to Marcus's now frozen business account, has been terminated. You've been evicted. Your landlord thus confirmed it." Her eyes widened in horror. She looked at Marcus, a sudden, furious realization dawning on her. He had failed to secure even her basic housing. He had completely destroyed her prospects, leaving her with absolutely nothing. Her entire scheme had backfired spectacularly, leaving her truly abandoned. I looked from Serena, broken and distraught, to Marcus, slumped in defeat. "So tell me," I challenged, my voice cutting through the lingering silence. "Will you fight me on this? With what money? With what lawyer?" I stood by the window, a silent spectator, as Marcus and Serena loaded their meager belongings into his car. It was astonishingly little, mostly clothes and a few personal mementos that had somehow escaped my carefully orchestrated financial disentanglement. The car itself, I knew, was scheduled for repossession the very next morning, a final swift consequence of his terminated lease agreement with Sterling Financial. Marcus's posture was heavy with defeat, his shoulders slumped as he cast a last, lingering glance at the house he thought he owned. Serena beside him stared rigidly ahead, her face an unreadable mask of humiliation and anger. As they drove away, disappearing down the tree-lined street, I felt not triumph, but a profound sense of relief. The performance was over. The carefully constructed facade, the role I had played for 3 decades, had finally dissolved. 3 hours later, my phone rang. It was Serena. Her voice, usually so sharp and confident, was broken, almost timid. "Eleanor," she began, "how did you do it? How did you build all that wealth secretly? For 30 years. There was a note of genuine curiosity, almost awe in her tone that surprised me. Then a confession. I never want to feel this powerless again. It was a moment of unexpected honesty from a woman I had only known as deceitful. I gave her some brief, pointed advice, which, to my further surprise, she seemed to genuinely take to heart. 6 months later, I found myself standing on the sprawling terrace of my real home, a magnificent estate nestled on the shores of Lake Geneva. This was a sanctuary Marcus had never known existed, purchased years ago under a different shell corporation, a place of peace and genuine beauty. I sipped a glass of exquisite Riesling from my own private vineyard, feeling the cool breeze on my face, surrounded by possessions that were authentically mine, acquired with my own funds for my own enjoyment. Everything here was truly mine, unequivocally, without subterfuge. Sterling Financial Group had thrived in the wake of the Morrison scandal. The story, once it inevitably leaked, discreetly, of course, with careful spin, had attracted a new clientele. Women like me, quietly powerful, seeking to protect their assets from husbands who underestimated them, or worse, plotted against them. My reputation as a formidable financial strategist, a quiet force, had solidified. Marcus's consulting business, stripped of my financial backing and his primary source of income, had collapsed within 3 months. He now worked for a corporate firm, a stark contrast to his days as an independent mogul, earning a mere 20% of his previous income. The fall from grace had been swift and brutal. Serena, in a surprising turn, had taken my advice to heart. She was working as a receptionist at a mid-tier law firm, slowly paying back her debts. She had even enrolled in evening business classes, genuinely attempting to understand real money and how to earn it ethically. The encounter had perhaps jolted her into a painful but necessary reality. My divorce settlement was surprisingly straightforward. Marcus received the $50,000 he had initially offered me, along with his personal belongings, as stipulated by the prenup he had insisted upon. My lawyer, a brilliant woman named Martha, had been thoroughly impressed by the elegance and legal impregnability of my asset-protecting structures. "Eleanor," she had said, "you're a master chess player." The suburban mansion, the stage for my 3-decade performance, was sold to a young couple just starting their lives together. It felt like a fitting new beginning for a place that had held so much of my past. I kept very few objects from that performance life. I preferred to build anew with authentic memories. I often spoke with my sister Beatrice about everything. She had always been my confidant, even if she hadn't known the full extent of my financial dealings. I confessed to her the profound sadness I felt, not anger about the 30 years of pretense. It was a life I had chosen, yes, but also one dictated by a desire to preserve a marriage that ultimately wasn't worth preserving. Now my life was truly my own. I embraced solo travel, embarking on adventures I had only dreamed of. I learned Thai cooking from a master chef in Bangkok, my senses alive with new flavors and experiences. I was planning a photography expedition to the remote landscapes of New Zealand. I had also taken a more public role in Sterling Financial Group, no longer content to operate solely from the shadows. And I was writing a memoir, a story about building wealth and maintaining power while navigating the complexities of a traditional marriage. A guide for other women who might find themselves in similar, unspoken situations. Looking back, my transformation wasn't just about financial independence. It was about becoming authentic. I had spent so long performing a role, the supportive wife, the dutiful homemaker, the woman who didn't work. Now I was simply Eleanor, successful, independent, and finally, truly free. I realized that true love, in its purest form, means refusing to diminish oneself for anyone else's comfort or ego. I gazed into the mirror, my reflection showing a woman with streaks of silver in her hair, lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and wisdom. At 61, I saw not just a survivor, but a confident, successful, and gloriously free woman.